So, woke up after a few hours, groggily. I checked my watch, and I think it was 3 in the afternoon. So I had basically slept, I think, the best part of about 4 hours, and it didn't seem like that at all. There was no phone in the room, so Dave hadn't contacted me. Maybe he was still giving through the good news. Who knew? I put my shorts on, a pair of denim shorts. I put on a white t-shirt, and I put some sunscreen on. Dave had given me some Factor 50, being white and not being brown. I'd never really had a tan before. I didn't know how my skin was going to react, so I put it on my face and my head, obviously having very little hair, having a crew cut on my arms and my legs. I smelled like coconut, and I headed down to Dave's house. I knew roughly where Dave was. I came out, turned left, saw the restaurant, and then headed down. Knocked on the door, and next thing I could hear this loud, "Come in!" Opened up the door, and Dave was sitting with Amanda, and he was sitting with another guy who I suspected at the time was one of the guys coming to learn how to dive. And I went in, grabbed a coffee, went over and sat down, and David introduced this guy called John. And John was very brown. He was a British guy, had a bit of a lisp, about 6'2", and John was RAF, so he was based on the mainland, and he was gonna be on the dive courses. He was on leave. He got 6 weeks leave, so he was going to be on the dive course with me. So after having a coffee and stuff, Dave says, right, he goes, we're going to just get the revision going straight away. We're just going to get this, we're going to get these exams out of the way, Colt. He says, you're good for that. So there was no fucking around with David. He says, we'll get the exams out of the way. We'll head into town later on. He goes, I'll take you, he says, into San Pedro. He goes, and we'll have a look around. So got the books out, did an hours of revision. And then Dave put 5 exams down on the table, just paper exams. Looked through them, went through them, ticked them off. John was finished long before I was. I can't remember the last time I did an exam, probably in school. And Amanda had left because she was already qualified. So Dave left me and John to it. He told us not to be talking. He didn't give a fuck if we copied. He didn't really care, but he just says, call, do the best you can. And I was really glad that I passed with flying colours. Passed all of them, high 90s. And that was it. So that was me qualified as an open water diver. With the exams, all I had to do then was get into the water, put the gear on, be familiar with the gear, and do the skills. And that would be the next day. So Dave was happy enough. He ticked everything off. Another big slap in the back of the head. Well done, Gibbo. Fucking good skills. And he says, give me half an hour. He says, chill out, give me half an hour. He says, I'm going to go shower. And he says, we'll be ready, we'll go into town. So I sat with John at the back. John was a real nice guy. He was comms. He was did all the comms and stuff for the RAF. He called in airstrikes, all that type of stuff. I can't remember the name of it, to be honest, with what he did. But he was into all the comms and stuff. And yeah, he was nice. John was 27. Not married, no kids, etc. Blah blah blah. And for the time that John was on the island, him and I became pretty good friends. Didn't hang out too much with him, but we were quite friendly, and he was actually a good diver. So half an hour passed very quickly. John thinned out. He went somewhere else. I think he was seeing some chick or something. And me and Dave took a walk into town. He says, call, there's 2 ways we can go. He says, we can take the main road. He goes down this way here. He says, and we can get choked by dust and sand. He goes from the traffic. He says, we'll walk over the grass. He goes, get on the seawall and walk down the beach. Which way do you want to go? I looked at him. And so we went down the beach, and it was absolutely stunning. we walked over about 100 feet of grass and palm trees, and Dave was saying, careful of the coconuts. The trees were about 30 feet high. Careful of the coconuts, they'll come down, he goes, and smash your big baldy Swede. So we walked in through the trees. I kept an eye up, and the next thing then we were on a concrete seawall. And a seawall is basically what stops the sea coming up onto the land, and that was about 5 feet tall. And I looked down, and about 4.5 feet wide, 5 feet wide, pure concrete, rebar concrete. And I looked down into the sea, and I couldn't believe I could see little crabs, hermit crabs, fish, a couple of eels, small eels. I saw 2 stingrays. I'd never seen this stuff except on TV, and I just kind of like stopped to have a look at them. Dave didn't rush me. He's very patient. He knew I'd never seen this stuff before. You know, Dave just stood there, and he's like, what do you think, Col? I was fucking near close to tears. I couldn't talk. And so I anticipated a slap on the back of the head and a juke down, and we just carried on walking. We were talking and stuff, and I'd learned that you know, David had left the military. He left the Signal Corps, and his last posting was Belize on the mainland. So he got out there. He went back to the UK, and he demobbed, and he came back. He was back 6 months later. Him and Sue had already been married, because I'd met Sue previously, and David come back and began his life. He began his life in Belize, and he was one of, I think, 3 white instructors on the island, and I was soon to learn again a role reversal, how prejudiced it was down there, and how it felt to be bullied, but kind of like in an understandable way, because when foreigners would come to our country, they were bullied, you know what I mean? So it was kind of like a role reversal and a bit of a shock to the system, for me, to be honest. And I was soon to learn that on my own as well. So, but that was quite a while before that happened to me. Anyway, so Dave and I continued walking, and we eventually got to a place called Ramones. And Ramones was a holiday villa type place. All the buildings were made of the natural wood with thatch roofs. It was absolutely gorgeous. There was 1-stories and 2-story buildings. There was a bar called the Purple Parrot. There was a small swimming pool. There was a pier going down with a palapa on the end and a dive shop on the end. It was unreal. Again, Dave knew everybody. Dave introduced me as his cousin Colin, just on the island. He called me white boy because I was probably as tanned as a bottle of milk. And, you know, I was the brunt of a few jokes and bit of finger poking about being how white I was and all this type of stuff. And I just stood and, you know, just listened to it and, you know, had a bit of a laugh at people. And everybody just seemed to be like really, really cool. There was no drama, you know, there was friendly banter, a lot of slagging. It was really good. We spent about 45 minutes at Ramones, and then we walked on down the beach. We passed a few more places. We passed a place called the Spindrift Hotel. We passed Amigos Del Mar, Friends of the Ocean, or Friends of the Sea, Friends of the Ocean dive shop. We passed Tackle Box, which was an old, it was a bar, snack, restauranty place on stilts, which had a shark pen. And the sharks were, they were nurse sharks, which didn't bite. They didn't have teeth, should I say. And they didn't attack you. But it was my first time seeing sharks and stingrays and turtles in pens. And to be quite honest, that kind of pissed me off when I saw that, because there was people jumping into them. And the guys that were jumping in were British soldiers that were out there. They're all pissed and jumping in and fucking jumping on top of the stingrays and the sharks and everything. And it was just, that really pissed me off. I didn't like to see that at all. And I was quite surprised at how pissed David was as well. And he fucking started shouting at them to get out.